Chapter 353. This is already the 6th hexagram. Do you still want to continue? Li Qingshan asked. Although Han Xiongji did not mention it, this concerned the life and death of a legalist disciple. She had most likely asked Ma Bai to divine for her. If he could determine that she was still alive, then it would not be a search mission, but a rescue mission. Searching for the living was also a search, and searching for the dead was also a search. Little and gradually became more familiar with the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots, but the 6 consecutive hexagram were all the worst. She could not find any chance of survival at all. However, she refused to give up because it was very strange. If Qian Rongji was dead, she should be able to divine the approximate location of her corpse. However, the hexagram showed that she seemed to be trapped in hell. This was the most unbelievable thing. Hell was the home of all souls, but even with Ma Bai's divination, it was impossible for him to reach another world. I want to divine one last time. All right. Li Qingshan nodded. Although the spirit turtle had the ability to divine, he was only a 2/9 spirit turtle at most. At most, he could sense the danger of death. When he was in Ancient Wind City, he had not sensed any danger even when he was trapped in Altar Master Black Lotus Formation. He had relied on his demon instincts to sense that something was wrong at the last moment, but he did not manage to escape. Of course, he felt that his senses were not sharp enough. In the end, it was more daunting than dangerous. Little and clenched her hands. The 7 types of yin and yang, the 5 elements, and the 7 types of true qi combined and condensed in a wondrous way. It was as if they were evolving the changes of all things in the world, matching with the thread of fate in the unseen world. In the end, it condensed into a cylinder. Thousands of colors mixed and revolved in a special pattern. It was like a kaleidoscope, forming various images, scenes, and words. However, Li Qingshan only took a glance at it, and he felt dizzy. A thin bamboo skewer. It slowly rose up from within. The cylinder disintegrated. Little and suddenly grasped the stick in her hand, as if she had grasped fate in the unseen world. The cloud bookcase of the 7 lots originated from the most ancient divination of the 7 stars. One stick represented one's fate. It could tell good or bad luck, life or death, and know the past and future. Li Qingshan could not see through it. He thought to himself that if he used a tortoise shell for divination, then Little and would be asking for a divination stick. Of course, he didn't know that his dream lover, Gu Yenying, used the 6 lines divination technique, which was guided by copper coins. Of course, this was not a real lot. There was no difference between the best lot and the worst lot. Instead, it was a piece of information that appeared in the ever-changing fate. For fate itself. Fortune and misfortune, life and death, there was no difference. The only thing that mattered was the human heart. Little and closed his eyes. He furrowed his brows and tried his best to free his imagination. To decipher the message in the lot. Fate would never tell you clearly, "Hey, Zhang-san, you're out of luck today." Even this simple message contained 10 times more information than an encyclopedia. It was 100 times more difficult to understand than a drunken painting by an impressionist. The main job of the fortune teller was to decipher the message and tell the fortune teller, "Hey, Zhang-san, you're out of luck today. You'd better not go out." And this was a question with a time limit. The shiny bamboo stick flickered and twisted constantly. Soon, it dissipated in Little An's hand. Li Qingshan asked, "How is it?" Little An opened his eyes and frowned. The cloud bookcase of the 7 lots was based on the previous 6 lots. Finally, she saw the greatest person in the White Lotus sect below the Holy Mother again. "Qian Rongji, you're still bold enough to come." Before Altar Lord Black Lotus could even say anything, a little girl in white clothes walked out from behind him. She only seemed to be 5 or 6 years old. She spoke with a childish voice, but the coldness in her eyes seemed to freeze all of her blood. She could not say anything at all. That's right, this was the White Lotus Mother, the source of her fear. You seem to have been looking for us the entire time. Altar Lord Black Lotus asked curiously. They did not know about Qian Rongji's appearance. They were just worried it was a trap. He had gone to great lengths to prevent White Lotus from stepping into the possible trap. There was no need for him to expose their whereabouts for the sake of a measly Qian Rongji. Today, he was no longer able to contain her anger, which was why he had appeared. Ma Amgu was not a patient person. She could not even be bothered to hunt them down, which also meant she no longer took her great enemies of the past seriously. Yes, the game had already ended. Qian Rongji immediately dropped to her knees and knocked her head into the water. Yes, Qian Rongji has fallen under Gu Yanying's control and committed a grave mistake. I can die 10,000 times over. I've specially come to apologize to the Holy Mother and Altar Lord. Don't mention that name. The little girl screamed. I'm no longer an Altar Lord. You can call me Black Lotus. I'm still the White Lotus Mother. The little girl screamed again. All right. You're still the White Lotus Mother. Black Lotus bent down and spoke like he was coaxing a child. Afterwards, he straightened up and rubbed his temples in distress. I really want to spare you, but can't you come up with a better reason? The White Lotus Mother really is difficult to coax now that she's angry. Qian Rongji wanted to say something, but Black Lotus raised his hand. I don't want to listen to your lies. Please treat me with sincerity, alright? In order to make you understand the severity of the situation, if you say another lie, I'll kill you. I don't want to listen to her. Black Lotus, kill her. Kill her. The White Lotus Mother constantly stamped her foot, making the water in the stream splash everywhere. Black Lotus grabbed the White Lotus Mother's tiny hand. Just tell me. The White Lotus Mother is running out of patience. She stands up and looks into my eyes. Tell me, why have you come? Qian Rongji stood up and gazed into Black Lotus' clear, dark eyes. She could not utter a single word of what she had prepared, as every single word was a lie. I want to beg for a way out. Don't even think about it. The White Lotus Mother kicked the water viciously. Black Lotus smiled. Very good. We have something in common now. There's no doubt that killing for the sake of hatred is pointless. Of course, not everyone believes that. For example, the tiny White Lotus Mother beside him was tempted to skin the great traitor, Qian Rongji, alive. I'm very curious. Why aren't you affected by the heart-cleansing technique of clear ripple? Qian Rongji said, it's probably because I've practiced arts of charm. The heart-cleansing technique of clear ripple is not an art of charm. Do you know its origins? Qian Rongji shook her head. She did not even feel like the technique had any effect on her at all. Black Lotus said. There had once been an eminent monk who had gone through the vicissitudes of life. He saw how the masses were all people who refused to come to their senses, so he created a technique out of great pity. He channeled his own comprehension into the minds of others, allowing them to attain enlightenment in the blink of an eye. Even a fool could comprehend the supreme truths of the Buddhist Dharma, no longer being troubled by the various troubles of the world. It was known as enlightenment. It was definitely not a method used by demonic cultivators to control people. The heart-cleansing technique of clear ripple came from this. It was impossible to resist, as the technique itself was beneficial. After receiving the technique, it was like awakening their innate wisdom, allowing them to comprehend the past. From then onwards, there would be no bottlenecks in the mind on the path of cultivation, all the way until they reached the limits of the user's cultivation. If Hua Sengzan had received this technique, he would have reached foundation establishment a few years ago. Only now did Qian Rongji understand why all the people of the White Lotus sect who had received this technique would smile so brightly. Even when they suffered heavy setbacks in the White Lotus sect, they would not become dejected, as if they were filled with endless satisfaction. Black Lotus said, "Can you tell me why?" Qian Rongji lowered her head. Actually, I really want to be like them. Since young, Had she ever experienced such a peaceful moment? She could not even remember. She furrowed her brows and shook her head helplessly. But I just can't feel happy. Chapter 354. I just can't be happy. I see. Black Lotus sighed gently and looked at her in pity. Originally, he thought Gu Yenying had a deeper plan, using some sort of artifact to block the heart-cleansing technique of Clear Ripple. However, the answer was unexpectedly simple. Even the heart-cleansing technique of Clear Ripple was unable to wash away the pitch-black pain in her heart. A situation like this had actually occurred before. However, those who failed would usually kill themselves very quickly. Even if they survived, they would be tormented to a state of agony, like a walking corpse, muddle-headed. Since there was no escape, death became the best salvation. Then why are you still alive? Why? Why? Qian Rongji lowered her head and murmured. Suddenly, she smiled and tidied her hair. Perhaps I just don't want to accept this. In this situation, everything she did was useless. Her life was in her hands, but she was instead fearless. Just like what Black Lotus had said, death was not a very bad choice for her. Black Lotus said sincerely, Rongji, I really want you to live, you can't. Don't even think about it, the White Lotus mother screamed. Then the problem right now is, how can I let you live? I might not be an altar lord anymore, but I still can't disobey the White Lotus mother's orders. Black Lotus. Where are you standing? The White Lotus mother stressed each word as she kicked Black Lotus's leg. Black Lotus laid out his hands helplessly. Qian Rongji just raised her head. Sunlight flickered like starlight between the cracks of the green leaves. Her figure was reflected in the quiet stream, aloof from the world. It was as if everything here no longer had anything to do with her anymore. She had already done all that was humanly possible. Black Lotus considered it for a while before suddenly smiling. He raised a finger. They all say that it's impossible to have everything right, but as long as you look carefully, you'll always find a way. Afterwards, he crouched down. He said to the White Lotus mother, Mother, will you be satisfied if you kill her like this? This will instead be a form of release for her. The White Lotus mother said, Do you think I'll let her die so easily? I'll make her taste all the torture in the world. Only when she cries and begs for mercy and breaks down mentally will I kill her. The corner of Qian Rongji's lips curled into a sneer. Crying, begging for mercy, having a nervous breakdown, do you want me to act it out for you right now? Black Lotus seemed to have grasped the crux of the matter. He smiled and said, Yes, torture. Do you still remember that? The White Lotus mother was taken aback. She smiled viciously. Yeah, that's it. You sure are clever. He took out an item and handed it to Black Lotus. Black Lotus opened his hand towards Qian Rongji. He was holding a sparkling amber. Sealed in the amber was a tiny snake as thin as a strand of hair. However, its gorgeous colors were mesmerizing. Qian Rongji asked, This item comes from the Mist Province. Snake goo. Qian Rongji frowned. The Mist Province was known as the Myriad Mountains. Although it had been under Great Xia's rule for many years, it was still a land of wilderness. The path of cultivation of the barbarians was very different from that of the Central Plains. It was directly inherited from the ancient times. The art of witchcraft was one of the most mysterious killing methods, and it was famous throughout the world. That's right. You want to use this to kill me? A friend of mine once said that true goo is not used to kill, but to make people wish they were dead. Qian Rongji's eyes lit up. Since it was worse than death, that meant she could live. However, this goo is called the pestering goo. In the first 300 years, it was always believed to be a dead goo, as no one has ever survived. They all died from agonizing torture. Even the most cold-blooded, tough man will become as fragile as a child after being afflicted with this goo. The White Lotus mother's smile widened. She was innocent and cruel. Qian Rongji also shivered. Black Lotus continued, only afterwards did people discover that this goo is not fatal. It doesn't even cause any harm. All those who die to this goo commit suicide. If they can endure the pain, it will instead bring them great benefits, which even gave birth to a sect that worships this snake as their sacred snake. Qian Rongji waded through the stream and walked over, reaching towards the snake-pestering goo without the slightest hesitation. Was it painful? She had always been very patient. However, Black Lotus brought his hands together, and his face became stern. Do you really plan on living like this? Once this goo is planted, it won't stop until you die. It's impossible to remove, which is why it's called pestering. It seems like I have no other choice. Qian Rongji's face was filled with mockery. Black Lotus gazed at her deeply. I suddenly feel a little regretful. If you choose to die, I'll give you a quick death. There won't be any pain at all. The White Lotus mother was very unhappy. Black Lotus. Black Lotus bowed and said sternly, no matter how unhappy you are, I can't just watch you do this. Slaughter and death will always be unavoidable, but humiliating and torturing isn't something we should do. If you insist on doing this, please kill me first. The White Lotus mother was helpless against him. All she could do was turn her head away viciously. Qian Rongji smiled. Thank you for your kind intentions, but if I only wanted a quick death, why would I have come here? Black Lotus fell silent for a while before opening his hand. Fine then. I respect your choice, but please listen to the last thing I have to say. According to what I know, this snake is not a creature of this world. Instead, it comes from the Hell realm. As a disciple of legalism, you should understand. Qian Rongji's eyes narrowed. She obviously understood. It was said that the Hell realm had a total of 18 major hells and countless smaller hells. They were the place where all souls of the dead returned to in the Great Thousand Worlds. All sins would receive the final judgment of the officials of Hell there. It was the supreme symbol of law. As such, it was very clear why the snake-pestering goo did not cause death. The torture of Hell had never been for the sake of slaughter, but for punishment. It would make even the most brutal criminal feel pain and then repent. This snake comes from the venomous snake Hell. The so-called torture of the human world is like playing house compared to the punishment of Hell. In other words, from today onwards you'll have to live in Hell every single day. Before he had even finished speaking, Qian Rongji had already picked up the amber and held it up to the sunlight. She raised her pretty face and looked at the beautiful snake inside. She glanced at Black Lotus and curled her lips. Thank you for your good idea. The amber slipped from her fingers. Under the illumination of the sunlight, the tiny snake inside seemed even more beautiful and enchanting. Suddenly, it opened its eyes and directly entered her mouth. In the darkness, cracks appeared on the amber. It shattered immediately. She was not the one who had freed it. Instead, it had broken free by itself. It was like a wild beast that had caught the scent of blood, a glutton that had seen delicious food. There was no shame in this. Souls filled with hatred were its favorite food and hotbed. It could not help but burrow in deeply. Qian Rongji trembled all over. She instantly knelt in the stream. The tiny snake, more beautiful than the rainbow, swam on her face, like a tattoo, moving on her skin. It seemed to be a little stronger than when it was in the amber. She suddenly opened her eyes wide and fell straight down, splashing the stream water. It was an indescribable pain. Even unimaginable pain, like a snake slithering. She opened her mouth wide. If she could make a sound, she would definitely be screaming right now. But the pain had seized her body and locked her throat. She could only make meaningless gurgling sounds. However, every inch of her body was groaning, and her whole soul was wailing. She had far underestimated the torture of Hell. She was very wrong, far from being as strong as she had imagined. In just a moment, she regretted it and was willing to do anything to relieve this pain. Were the souls of hell also repenting for the sins they had committed in life every day and night? Although she opened her eyes as wide as she could, her vision was blurry. Everything around her seemed to spin, turning into a blurry color. Vaguely, a black shadow approached her and said, "Since this is the path you've chosen, please allow me to wish you a safe journey." Black Lotus stood up and said to the White Lotus mother, who admired Qian Rongji's horrendous state with great interest, "Let's go." The White Lotus mother said, "Let me watch a little longer." Black Lotus became stern. The White Lotus mother cursed, "Stingy." When the first round of pain passed, the venomous snake from hell seemed to have had enough of its activity, entering a state of rest. She propped herself up and knelt up. The sky had already darkened completely, and she barely managed to organize her chaotic consciousness. Apart from the paleness of her face, she was basically unscathed. The White Lotus mother had not even touched a single hair on her. It was much better than the best-case scenario she had imagined. However, her mind and willpower seemed to have been completely destroyed. It was very strange. If a person endured unendurable pain, they would fall unconscious or go mad even if they managed to survive. However, she remained conscious the entire time, carefully savoring every single bit of pain. Perhaps this was the wondrous aspect of the punishment of hell. Returning to her senses, the first thing she did was grab her throat. All she needed to do was grab it gently, and blood would gush out, and she would be free. Her sharp nails dug into her pale white skin, and warm, bright red blood flowed out. After hesitating for quite a while, she pulled back her hand and stood up unsteadily. She found a small cave and dove into it, falling unconscious. She dreamed of a huge snake that was even more beautiful than a rainbow, swallowing her in a single gulp. She woke up very soon, and the second round of pain arrived. Time passed day by day. She took advantage of the time when she could move to replenish her food and water before waiting for the next round of pain in great fear. Yes, fear that she had never experienced before. She was so afraid that she trembled all over. Even when she was resting, the snake would use another method to torture her, making her want to free herself with death every single time. However, she refused to give up. Gradually, she could also perform some simple activities when she was being tortured, but the situation only worsened. Every single time, she would lose her rationality, wanting to rip the snake out of her body and tear off every inch of her skin. Fortunately, cultivators possessed tough bodies, so the wounds would always heal very quickly. She even began to wonder whether she could break free from the snake if she peeled off her own skin. However, her remaining rationality stopped her. The snake had already fused with her, and if she did that, she would die very soon. She could not die like this. At this moment, a dangerous aura interrupted her thoughts. A demonic beast that resembled a leopard followed the smell of blood and arrived in the cave. Its glowing eyes constantly drifted about in the darkness. This was a demonic beast that had condensed its demonic core. Perhaps it was the man-eating demonic beast that she had been tracking, but that was not important. Even if she was in perfect condition, she did not dare to say that she would definitely win. Now that she was extremely weak, she could not even move a finger. P.S. Bow to thank the student from the namespace for the reward, and congratulate the new sect master. Chapter 355. Little N did not answer Li Qingshan immediately. Instead, he sank into his thoughts silently. Since you have an idea, then go look for it. It won't take up much time anyway. It was rare for Little N to care about the matters of others, so Li Qingshan felt like he should encourage him. Qian Rongji had left these things for Little N, so they had basically done their best. It's far too dangerous. Little N shook his head. Don't worry. I might not be able to divine as well as you, but I can still sense true danger. Li Qingshan pointed at his head before rubbing her hair. I'll just treat it as going out with you. All right. He arrived at the Hawkwolf Guard and accepted the mission. He went upstairs to greet Han Qiongji. After some intimacy, Han Qiongji heard about the details of Li Qingshan's mission. She said in surprise, "You want to accept this mission? Are you very familiar with her?" "Of course not, but we've worked together a few times. She's probably dead already, so you should at least bring her corpse back." Li Qingshan studied Han Qiongji and said unconcernedly. Scorching sunlight poured in from the huge, floor-to-ceiling window. She sat on a high-backed chair, dressed in the uniform of a Scarlet Wolf Guard. She seemed extremely valiant. Li Qingshan sat on the long table in front of her. His face was filled with fantasies. Han Qiongji rubbed her chin in thought. This action was extremely masculine, which gave her a different kind of charm. "All right, you can go." Li Qingshan smiled. "What, aren't you worried that your man will run into the White Lotus Mother and be taken as a bodyguard?" Han Qiongji leaned back in her chair and raised her legs, placing them on the table. She looked down. "If it's little Hua, there might be a chance, but with your beauty, he'll probably be killed. I received the news a few days ago. The White Lotus Mother and Altar Lord Black Lotus. They've already returned to the Mist Province to rebuild the White Lotus sect." Li Qingshan said, "Is the news accurate? Aren't you afraid of getting caught there? The Mist Province isn't the Green Province. It's truly lawless. Basically all the people who could not withstand the pursuit of the Hawk Wolf Guard in the Green Province had fled there. If you really can't find it, don't forget to bring back a corpse." Han Qiongji blinked her eyes. "I don't think that's a good idea," Li Qingshan said. The contribution from the mission to search for Qian Rongji was still quite impressive. After all, it was related to the life or death of a Scarlet Wolf Guard. Who cares? Anyway, I'm in charge now. Little Flower isn't here, and old Wang has gone to cultivate. I have to deal with so many errands. It's so annoying. Okay, wait for me to come back." Li Qingshan leaned over and gave her a hot kiss. He got up and left. Han Qiongji came to the French window and watched his cloud rise into the sky. She smiled and pursed her lips. The speed of the demonic beasts was astonishing. 2 beast eyes glowed with light. They were like 2 fleeting shadows, dragging 2 long tails of light behind them. They circled around Qian Rongji in circles, rapidly approaching her. Qian Rongji's eyes were wide open. In the beginning, she circled around the demonic beast a little, but afterwards, she stopped moving as if she had become completely numb. The demonic beast confirmed that this was not a trap. The 2 streaks of green light that were circling around suddenly turned towards the center. The demonic beast lunged over and bit Qian Rongji's neck. That was the only place on her body with relatively few wounds. Even when she was in extreme pain, she could control herself at all times and not end her own life. Could it be that this was the result of 3 months of painful perseverance? At first, the 4 fangs pierced through her skin. It was indeed not an easy task to find someone in this forest that stretched for thousands of miles. But for Li Qingshan, it was not too difficult. He was very familiar with that woman's breath. When he moved quickly and carried out a dragnet-like search, the strong smell of blood also attracted his attention. He lifted the curtain woven by the vines. He saw a monster lying on the beast's stomach. It was a monster that devoured internal organs. A trace of familiar breath came through the strong smell of blood. He still could not believe his eyes. Qian Rongji. The monster suddenly raised its head. When it saw Li Qingshan, it showed a surprised expression and smiled extremely ferociously. It said in an extremely weak voice, "You're here." It was as if it was sitting peacefully at home, and a long-lost friend came to visit, rather than seeing a savior in despair. Li Qingshan did not say anything. He just took out the elixir and walked forward. The scene in front of him, even he could not bear to look at it. He did not expect the White Lotus sect to be so cruel. When Qian Rongji saw little and behind him, she suddenly felt ashamed and curled up. The poisonous snake entrenched in her body inexplicably calmed down a little. Li Qingshan wanted to open her mouth and put the elixir in. "Don't touch me." While she was stunned, Li Qingshan's hand had already touched her face. Suddenly, an indescribable pain. It spread all over her body. Where his fingertips touched, a colorful snake tattoo had appeared at some point. The parasite's instinct to protect its host would not change because of the host's will. From now on, no matter who it was, if they wanted to touch her, they would have to taste hellish pain. Spirit turtle suppresses the seas. Li Qingshan suddenly pulled his hand back and looked at it in shock. He saw that it was unscathed, and there was nothing wrong with his body. Just now, the pain was like a dream. At this moment, two tender little hands grabbed her hand. "Little Anne." Li Qingshan and Qian Rongji said at the same time. Little Anne's face did not show any painful expression. The hell snake could be extradited to this world to punish the living. It could also punish the dead in the hell of the poisonous snake. But Little Anne was neither alive nor dead. A warmth came from her hand. Qian Rongji saw a golden Buddhist light appear on Little Anne's body, then spread along her hands and spread to her entire body, enveloping her in the golden Buddhist light. The wounds on her body gradually healed. Soon afterwards, the uneven, hideous scars were wiped away bit by bit. This was no longer the effect of Buddhism, but the power of the path of white bone and great beauty. Her face seemed to be even more beautiful than before. Little Anne released her hand and returned to Li Qingshan's side. Qian Rongji said softly, "Thank you." She asked Li Qingshan, "Do you have water?" Li Qingshan snapped his fingers, and a tornado-like stream of water swirled around her body, washing away the filth and ragged clothes on her body. She turned into smoke and dissipated, revealing her fair skin and supple figure. She was completely naked. Li Qingshan had always been a very intense person, but when he stood before this woman, he always felt like his heart was as still as water. Even at a time like this, he could not be bothered to look away. Qian Rongji was the same. She picked up her 100 treasures pouch and took out a set of clothes, changing into them. She stretched out her arms and legs in a natural manner. She did not seduce him, nor did she avoid him. It was as if he did not treat her as a woman, and she did not treat him as a man. Li Qingshan said, "Looks like you've suffered quite a bit. Do you want to know?" Qian Rongji had already put on her clothes and was tidying her long hair in front of a mirror. "Tell me." Li Qingshan was indeed rather curious. Qian Rongji casually recounted her experiences, as if she was telling someone else's story. After listening to her, Li Qingshan also felt a chill inside. He asked, "How are you going to get rid of this goo?" Qian Rongji said, "There's no way to get rid of it, and there's no need to. As long as I can let go of my sense of shame and hatred, it will naturally stop tormenting me." The venomous snake hell was originally used to punish those who committed atrocities because of their shamelessness, and those who committed boundless sins because of hatred. But punishment was not the goal. It was to let the sinners realize their sins in hell, and finally obtain self-redemption and liberation. Only then could it be considered Buddha's mercy. Li Qingshan mocked, "Can you do it?" Qian Rongji also laughed, "Of course I can't do it. I will not be ashamed of anything. I hate everyone in the world." The venomous snake happily slithered around. She suddenly knelt on the ground, and her 10 fingers dug deeply into the ground. The smile on her face was twisted because of the pain, but it became more and more brilliant. Even if she was trapped in the endless hell and suffered endless suffering, she would not repent. P.S. Shamelessly asking for monthly votes will cause you to be trapped in the venomous snake hell, but even if you are trapped in the venomous snake hell, you still want to be satisfied. Chapter 356. Seeing her like this, killing intent surged through Li Qingshan's heart for some reason. Although she had already recovered from her wounds and turned back into the beautiful Qian Rongji, she felt even more inhuman than the monster he had just seen. He said indifferently, does that include me? Qian Rongji said, are you human? Li Qingshan was slightly taken aback. He sneered in disdain. As long as I can live happily, what does it matter if I'm human or not? Originally, I didn't want to stick my nose into your business, but little and divined that you still had a chance at survival, which was why I came. Qian Rongji glanced at Little and deeply. Little and remained the same as usual the entire time, showing no emotion at all. Qian Rongji smiled. Just treat the things I left with you as my repayment. Li Qingshan took off on a cloud and returned to Clear River City with the mission items. When Qian Rongji stood before Han Qiongji unscathed, Han Qiongji was surprised too. She knew that Qian Rongji had encountered the White Lotus Mother and had been heavily injured the entire time, resting in the forest the entire time. She smiled. You sure have a good life, little girl. So much for worrying for you. Even Han Qiongji had no idea about Qian Rongji's role in the mission against the White Lotus sect last time. Thank you for your concern, second senior sister, Qian Rongji said obediently. As for whether she had a good life or not, you could say that was the case. After receiving little Anne's treatment, the benefits of the hell snake gradually manifested. After the pain, her mind would always be especially clear. Her body and soul seemed to have changed slightly. Qian Rongji's return caused a disturbance in the Hawkwolf Guard. She changed her usual way of doing business and declined Han Qiongji's welcoming banquet. In the past 3 months, although she had developed a subtle connection with the snake that was entangling her and was able to control the torture time a little, she had to spend more time in harmony with it. The path of the future was once again in her hands. He returned to his residence alone. A familiar figure stood in front of the door. Qian Rongji was surprised. Little Tian, why are you here? Chu Tian's face was full of concern as he said, I heard that you came back. Where have you been these past few days? I was so worried about you that I wanted to look for you several times. Unfortunately, he didn't go even once. Qian Rongji was not surprised at all. It was not that he was not sincere to her. She was very confident in her own means. It was just that for some people, nothing was more precious than their own lives. Facing Chu Tian's outstretched hand, her eyes lit up. If she held this hand now, any genius would have to kneel and beg for mercy. No matter what kind of trump card they had, she could force them to reveal it. However, she hesitated. It was better for her to pull her hand back. Chu Tian was a genius that everyone paid attention to right now. If he died mysteriously, it would definitely shake up the academy. At a time like this, it was best if she did not cause any trouble. He was already hers anyway. She suddenly felt a sense of joy. Although she was still a 6th-layer Qi practitioner, she now possessed fatal fangs that could harm these so-called geniuses. Chu Tian was disappointed, but he felt guilty inside, so he dared not say anything. When he heard that it was Li Qingshan who had brought her back, he felt even more gloomy inside. Why was this guy everywhere? When Qian Rongji accidentally mentioned that she had lost her 100 treasures pouch during a mission and was worried about her future cultivation, Chu Tian immediately took out many pills and spiritual stones generously. Qian Rongji turned him down before accepting it. Thank you, little Tian. I'll return them to you. Chu Tian gazed at her face in fascination. He felt that she was even more charming and enchanting than before. With a gentle cough, Wu Zhen emerged from the darkness. He had thought about looking for her in the past, but as a descendant of a clan, he obviously could not treat his life as a joke and go to the forest where the White Lotus Mother might appear. Afterwards, he felt like she was dead for sure, so he stopped thinking about it. When he heard that he had returned, he hurried over to see him and greeted him with an unnatural expression. Qian Rongji glanced at Chu Tian and smiled. Brother Wu, you've come. Seeing how she did not blame him at all, Wu Zhen felt even more ashamed. When he heard that she had lost her 100 treasures pouch, he also gave her some spiritual stones and pills in a hurry. As a descendant of a clan, he was still very well off in this aspect. He was even wealthier than Han Qiongji. Chu Tian said a few words of jealousy to her, and the two of them parted on bad terms. Qian Rongji let out a heavy sigh. She could not swallow the food that was right by her mouth, which was quite a pity. If only the world could be a little more chaotic, so chaotic that no one would care even if someone died. Qian Rongji was not a prominent figure, but she was extremely popular in the 100 schools of thought. In the next few days, people would come to visit her, not just from the school of legalism. There were quite a few disciples from other schools too, and none of them came empty-handed. Her 100 treasures pouch began to swell again. Everyone said that ever since junior sister Qian had returned, her bearing had changed drastically. She had become even more beautiful and enchanting. However, no one knew that every night, when it was quiet, she would lock herself up completely and begin her routine journey to hell. Under the nourishment of pain, the colorful, venomous snake was growing bit by bit. Summer passed and autumn came. Li Qingshan woke up in the bamboo loft. His true qi had already gradually reached the peak of the 7th layer. Before long, he would be able to break through again. All he saw was little and staring at him with wide eyes. Li Qingshan smiled. Stop staring. Go conduct the morning classes, or your master will start nagging me again. Ever since the Buddhist Dharma assembly, she had been in charge of the morning classes in the Ansrava temple. Afterwards, she would allocate the tasks for the Buddhist disciples for the day. This was obviously the one thought master's arrangement, and it was the job of the primary disciple in the first place, so she could not shirk it. However, there were many benefits as well. She had already earned quite a lot of pills for Li Qingshan from the one thought master. Li Qingshan did not just treat her as a child laborer. Practicing a high-level ability like the Path of White Bone and Great Beauty placed the most emphasis on the cultivation of the mind. This was not something that could be resolved by reading a few Buddhist scriptures or conducting a Dharma assembly. It required her to accumulate it bit by bit in her daily life. A flower was a world, a leaf was a Bodhi tree. Li Qingshan had grown accustomed to her, so he was rather reluctant to part with her. However, upon further thought, he treated it as sending a child to school. With her identity as the primary disciple, coming into contact with a few more people and matters would definitely bring great benefits to her future cultivation. After little and left, Li Qingshan sat there for a while longer. He neither cultivated nor practiced martial arts. All he did was empty his mind and think about nothing. It was equivalent to waking up early and brushing his teeth and washing his face. Only then did he emerge from the room. The sky was already bright. 2 children played around in the bamboo forest as they swept up the fallen leaves with a broom. They were both second-layer qi practitioners. They channeled their true qi into the broom, and with a wave of their hands, they kicked up a fierce gust of wind. Even the bamboo forest swayed gently. The two of them directly began fighting with their brooms. It was actually extremely methodical. They called out, "I'm the second senior brother, and you're the little junior brother." Suddenly, they saw Li Qingshan emerge and lowered their heads in a hurry. They said politely, "First senior brother." Before the next entrance examination, the School of Novels had a new disciple. After a period of nurturing, the children selected from various places were given the opportunity to choose their schools. The 2 children chose the School of Novels. They both cultivated the water element, and their talent was nothing special. However, they made Lu Chuanfeng so happy that he could not close his mouth for a few days. This continued until the School of Novels finally prospered in his hands. Li Qingshan was finally no longer alone. He patted them on the head. "Stop fooling around. Go and study." The older child said, "We still have to sweep the floor." The other child added, "If we don't sweep it clean, master will scold us." Li Qingshan knew that Lu Chuanfeng was enjoying being a master. In the past, this place was littered with fallen leaves. When had he ever seen him care? He also liked the two children very much, so he said with a smile, "I'll help you sweep." A crystalline water dragon flew out of his hand and swept away all the fallen leaves, revealing the cobblestone path below. The two children cheered, their faces filled with admiration. When could they be as powerful as eldest senior brother? "Ah, June, Sheng, you're done sweeping the floor. Get over here." Lu Chuanfeng's authoritative voice sounded from the bamboo loft. "Yes, master." Li Qingshan smiled and shook his head. He watched as they skipped over. Ever since they came, Lu Chuanfeng seemed to have changed into a different person. He put on the dignity of a master. "Qingshan, come back early too," Lu Chuanfeng said. Li Qingshan also said, "Yes, master." Lu Chuanfeng stroked his beard in satisfaction. He looked inside his body. The divine talisman of great creation was shining. The amount of wish power he had accumulated was unprecedented. He had been stuck at the 10th layer of chi refinement for many years. Now, he finally had some confidence to touch the door to foundation establishment. What was the most important thing for a school? It had to be a foundation establishment cultivator. Otherwise, no matter how famous they were, they would be looked down upon. The school of novels still had to rely on him, the head of the school. In order to save wish power in preparation for foundation establishment, he could no longer bear to transform into a woman. With two young disciples around, he could not afford to lose face. When Li Qingshan arrived outside the island, he saw Li Long working there. Thanks to the various crops he had planted, Li Qingshan was able to pacify millipede in the insect sack. He greeted him with a smile and soared into the sky. Li Qingshan turned into a small dot and landed on Great War Island. Only then did Li Long lower his head and continue tending to the herb garden. Among the many crops, spiritual herbs were the most difficult to grow. They had extremely high requirements for various environments. However, the process of growing them was also the most beneficial for the disciples of the School of Agriculture. Li Long had cleared out a small piece of land on Cloud Wisp Island, which was rich in spiritual qi. He tried to grow a few medicinal herbs that were easy to grow. Although he did not know the results, his horticultural skills and qi refinement cultivation had clearly improved. He would soon be able to advance further. As long as he did not lack wealth, companions, methods, and land, the first few layers of qi refinement were relatively easy to break through. On the practice field, Li Qingshan's fist whistled through the air, smashing towards Han Tie's face. Han Tie's body spun like a spinning top, the spear in his hand turning into a rolling black dragon that swept towards Li Qingshan's legs. Li Qingshan snickered. He did not care about his lower body at all. His fists changed, transforming into layers of afterimages. To the surrounding military disciples, it looked like several dozen fists had struck out at once, covering the sky and covering the earth as they headed towards Han Tie's face. "Who said I can't touch your face?" he shouted, "Pay up." Legends of the Great Sage readers are welcome to log in. Read the full text. It was not as simple as he had imagined at the start, where he could casually learn for a year or so, then refine large amounts of true spirit pills and exchange them for cultivation pills. In reality, this process was filled with difficulties. The first step was to gather spirit herbs. Even though the spirit herbs used to refine true spirit pills were far inferior to blue butterfly flowers, they were still extremely rare. He had to first use a large number of spirit stones. To refine all of the blue butterfly flowers into true spirit pills, he would need to spend at least tens of thousands of spirit stones. Among them, there were one or two that were practically priceless. They were in the hands of alchemists, who wanted to use them to refine other high-grade pills. If he wanted to buy them, he would have to spend at least 1 or 2 times the price. After causing such a huge commotion, everyone would know what he wanted to do. Never underestimate the intelligence of other cultivators. Then came the second step, refinement. Alchemy was not that simple. Although he had a powerful tool like the jade-coiled dragon sculpted furnace in his hands, to refine true spirit pills, he would have to spend at least a few months to learn. After learning, he would just barely be able to refine them, but the success rate would definitely be pitifully low. In other words, a large number of precious medicinal herbs would be wasted. If he wanted to increase the success rate, it was very simple. He just had to spend another 2 or 3 years learning. However, whether or not he could succeed was still a different matter. If he could casually refine high-grade pills like true spirit pills after learning for 2 or 3 years, refining one furnace after another, then the streets would be filled with alchemists. The last step was to sell them. Even if he ignored all the previous problems and refined a large number of true spirit pills, how would he sell them and exchange them for cultivation pills? This was not a game. He just had to find a store, pull it up, and click the mouse. First of all, he had to conceal his identity. However, that meant that the price would inevitably be lowered, and he might even be blackmailed. A man's wealth was his own ruin. A batch of true spirit pills that could cultivate foundation establishment cultivators meant that many foundation establishment cultivators who usually looked very kind and amiable might change their appearance. "Can I trust you?" Li Qingshan casually asked. In Ru Xian's alchemy room, Ru Xian was teaching Li Qingshan how to refine a furnace of fragrance-containing pills. It could be considered a relatively high-grade pill, but it was not used for cultivation. Taking fragrance-containing pills could cause one's body to have a strange fragrance. Recently, it was very popular among female cultivators. This time, it was not a mission from the 100 schools of thought, but Ru Xian's work. During a boring interval, the two of them were too lazy to joke around. Li Qingshan quietly listened to the sound of snowflakes falling on the roof. He didn't look at Ru Xian, but stared at the wall as if he were thinking about something. "Why are you suddenly asking this?" Ru Xian turned her head. Li Qingshan looked into Ru Xian's eyes. "Answer me." Ru Xian's clear black and white eyes swiveled around, as if thinking about why Li Qingshan was asking this. She looked at the beam and said, "I don't know either. Although we've known each other for so long, you seem to be shrouded in a mysterious veil that I can't see through." Li Qingshan said. After knowing each other for so long, they joked around and talked about everything, but he had never heard her talk about her background. Even if she did mention it, she would immediately change the topic. That's really too much of a coincidence. Ru Xian stared at Li Qingshan. In her heart, wasn't Li Qingshan the same? Their eyes met, and after a moment of silence, Li Qingshan smiled. Then, his smile was like a mirror image reflected on her face. Yes, they both had secrets that couldn't be divulged, but even if they were friends, there was no need for them to share all of their secrets. "Have you refined a true spirit pill before?" "I haven't. If there's a chance, I'd like to try," Ru Xian said calmly. The most important spirit herb of a true spirit pill was a spirit herb. Blue butterfly flowers were nearly extinct. There weren't too many people who had refined them. Li Qingshan opened his palm, and a shimmering blue butterfly fluttered in the air. It flew in front of Ru Xian. "Then come and try it." Ru Xian stretched out her hand, letting that blue butterfly of light land on her fingertip. She exclaimed in surprise, "It really is a blue butterfly flower. I've only seen it in books. I didn't think you'd actually have it. No wonder you painstakingly cultivated the art of alchemy." So it was to refine a true spirit pill. Li Qingshan smiled and shook his head. "No, not one." Ru Xian's mouth opened slightly. Blue butterflies of light fluttered in the alchemy room. Dozens, hundreds, even more, they rendered the alchemy room magnificent and beautiful. But in her heart, she was thinking about exchanging them for spirit stones. Could they fill up this alchemy room? After a long time, Ru Xian finally came back to her senses. She looked deeply at Li Qingshan, and her eyes flickered with extraordinary splendor. "Thank you for your trust." His eyes flickered. Li Qingshan said, I also had no choice. After I finish refining them, I can give you 30%. This number. It made Ru Xian's heart beat fiercely. Not to mention anything else, with this amount of true spirit pills, she could immediately start breaking through to the foundation building realm. It was Li Qingshan's next words that made Ru Xian calm down. You're in charge of collecting the other spiritual herbs. You're in charge of refining them. Finally, you're in charge of helping me exchange them for medicinal pills for cultivation. It'd be best if they're Dao accumulation pills. Most importantly, you're in charge of keeping it a secret. I believe you understand this even without me telling you. Of course I understand. Ru Xian smiled slightly. Once the news is leaked, I might even lose my life. Is that so? Li Qingshan's situation wasn't as serious as she imagined. After all, this was still an orderly and prosperous age of peace. He just didn't want people to think of the underground. Ru Xian said, the 100 schools of thought isn't as safe as you think. The patriarchs might not do anything to us, but what if there's pressure from above? Isn't the reason why you're afraid of working with the Han family because they're too powerful, while I'm all by myself? Li Qingshan could not help but admit this. He could trust Han Qiongji, but he could not trust the entire Han family. Ru Xian did not come from an aristocratic family. Her past was a blank slate. It was said that she was not even a part of the Clear River Prefecture. As the primary disciple of the School of Medicine, she was in charge of the medicinal storehouse of the School of Medicine. It was not difficult for her to retrieve some spiritual herbs in the name of refining other pills. In the afternoon of the next day, Li Qingshan arrived at the alchemy room again. Ru Xian took out another formation scroll. She set down the formation and ensured that no one could discover this place. Li Qingshan asked, how is it? Ru Xian said sternly, my master already knows about this. What? Li Qingshan was surprised and furious. He took a step forward and grabbed her shoulder. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Oi, it hurts. Ru Xian frowned slightly. She was like a goddess cradling her heart, sorrowful and moving. Li Qingshan became even more vexed. This shameless woman. However, he relaxed his grip. Their faces were inches away from each other. After separating yesterday, they had both guessed each other's identities for a very long time. In the past few months, they had not had any physical contact at all. Now, they suddenly felt rather awkward. Li Qingshan let go of her shoulder. This isn't the time to joke around. Ru Xian said, I'm just telling you to relax a little. Don't act like you're a thief. Li Qingshan said, I'm not a thief. I'm committing adultery. Ru Xian put her arm around Li Qingshan's shoulder with a smile. That's not impossible. I like rich men the most. Why don't you kick the first young Miss Han? Don't forget to take back the heavenly maiden scatters the blossoms. Give it to me, and I'll give you the pill cauldron I normally use as compensation. She normally used a high-grade spiritual artifact pill cauldron too. Li Qingshan said, don't even think about it. Hurry up and take back the spiritual herbs. Why are there so few? Ru Xian said, it's already enough for the beginning. If you take too much at once, people will notice something amiss. Take it slowly. Li Qingshan expressed his understanding. Ru Xian said, then, let's begin. Oh right, what's the name of your cauldron? Crystal Granule Cauldron. Ru Xian shrank the crystal granule cauldron to the size of a palm. Then, according to the order, she placed the spiritual herbs one by one inside first. Finally, she placed a blue butterfly flower. The first time was purely for the purpose of experimenting and accumulating experience. Her goal was only a true spirit pill. She basically had no hopes of success. Ru Xian sat cross-legged with a focused expression. She no longer had the relaxed and casual look she usually had when refining pills. Li Qingshan didn't dare to disturb her at the side. He meditated and cultivated at the side. After more than 4 hours, the pill cauldron opened, and a strange fragrance filled the air. I succeeded by a fluke. Here. Ru Xian smiled and took out a purple pill from the pill cauldron. It was exactly the same as the one he had seen before. Li Qingshan took her hand. This is yours. He shook it lightly. It's a pleasure working with you. However, the second furnace of pills failed, and a blue butterfly flower was wasted. Ru Xian couldn't help but sigh softly. On the other hand, Li Qingshan's expression was normal because the blue butterfly flower had come too easily. He said, just continue. This made Ru Xian sigh. Rich people were indeed different. However, I'll go back and rest for a while. I'll recover my spirit and organize my thoughts. We'll continue tomorrow. Ru Xian put away the crystal granule cauldron and removed the spirit formation. She suddenly smiled. If you still don't go out, eldest young Miss Han might really think we're committing adultery. I almost forgot. I'll see you tomorrow then. Li Qingshan made his way out of the alchemy room, but he sighed over the fact that he had made the right choice. With Ru Xian's many years of alchemy coupled with a supreme-grade spiritual artifact cauldron, the current success rate was only 50%. All she saw was Li Qingshan holding her face with a face full of concern. She felt a little warm in her heart. Don't think too much. I wanted to tell you later, but I'm preparing to go into seclusion for a period of time. Legend of the Great Sage welcome readers to log in. Read the full text. Chapter 358. You want to break through to the 10th layer of Qi practitioner? Li Qingshan immediately understood. She had been stuck at the 9th layer of Qi practitioner for a very long time. Opening the 12 standard meridians was much more complicated than opening the 8 extraordinary meridians. It required absolute focus, so Qi practitioners would usually choose to enter seclusion to break through. Yeah. You even said you wanted to catch up to me. Han Xiongji pouted, but her face was full of smiles. How long will it take? At least a few months. Han Xiongji pondered. That meant they wouldn't be able to see each other for a few months. I'll let you take advantage of me today. Han Xiongji propped herself up with her hands. Her delicate collarbones seemed thin, but the pair of jade rabbits on her chest seemed even fuller, as if they were about to burst out of her clothes. Li Qingshan relaxed and said with a smile, then I'll do as you say. He reached behind her and undid the knot. The fiery red tube top slid down, revealing 2 lumps of snow-white skin that stood proudly like they were carved from jade. There were also the 2 bright red spots that Li Qingshan dreamed of. Han Xiongji didn't hide her embarrassment like other women. She maintained her original posture, but she turned her head away, leaving Li Qingshan with a delicate and shy side profile. Her jade cheeks were rosy, making her seem especially elegant. However, Li Qingshan's desire was slightly quelled. He admired her half-naked body. She was like a goddess carved from marble. Every single curve was perfect, giving him a feeling that he couldn't profane her. Han Xiongji bit her lower lip. Compared to his warm and wanton hands, his gaze seemed to be more embarrassing. She said in annoyance, have you seen enough? I won't be able to see enough for a lifetime. As he said that, Li Qingshan wrapped his arms around her and kissed her red lips. He licked and kissed her soft neck, then slowly moved down to kiss her delicate collarbone, leaving behind a faint trail of water. In the end, he buried his head in her cleavage until he found that red bean. He gently bit it. Han Xiongji let out a soft cry. She twisted his ear and panted, are you, a child? Li Qingshan looked up and said with a smile, I'm not. I can give you one. At the same time, he fiddled with her ample bosom, admiring the changes in her shape as he wished. Her supple bosom seemed to overflow from between his fingers. As soon as he loosened his grip, it returned to its perfect shape. I don't want to. I hate children the most, Han Cheongji said stubbornly. However, if he really wanted her, he would have to wait until she reached the foundation establishment stage. She suddenly felt a little surprised. A year ago, no, half a year ago, she had never thought of bearing a child for a man. Now, she was seriously considering this question. This feeling. It was as if she was possessed. She patted Li Qingshan's face and said, "Bad guy, did you drug me or use some kind of charm on me?" Li Qingshan said, "That's why I've always been suspicious. I, Li Qingshan, am a great man with a heart of stone. I can have any woman I want, yet I just have to be charmed by a little girl like you. I even have to hold back my anger so that I can preserve my chastity for you. It really doesn't make sense." Han Cheongji was both annoyed and amused. She had never seen such a shameless person who took advantage of her while at the same time. At the same time, he complained that he couldn't attract bees and butterflies. However, when she thought about it carefully, she felt a bit moved. Men in the current era, even if they were mortals, would have 3 wives and 4 concubines if they had a bit of money. Cultivators were even more free to do whatever they wanted. Suddenly, she felt Li Qingshan taking off her panties again. Li Qingshan said, "I'm just appreciating it in advance. You can't be that you won't even satisfy your fiancé's request, right? Don't worry, I'll definitely wait until our wedding night, then I'll turn you into a woman." How could Han Cheongji refuse this man who was about to become her husband? She could only tap the tip of his nose and said in a weak voice, "We've already agreed. You're not allowed to go back on your word." Li Qingshan smiled faintly and lifted her up. He grabbed the edge of her skirt and pulled it down, revealing her soft, snow-white buttocks. Han Cheongji did not even have time to leave behind her last line of defense. In the blink of an eye, he had stripped her like a white sheep. Both of their hearts trembled. Although they had already hugged countless times, this time was completely different from the past. The bronze and Snow White were tightly pressed against each other. One was as hard as iron and the other was as soft as cotton, as if they were about to merge into one. Han Cheongji hugged him tightly, her chest pressed tightly against his chest. She listened to his powerful heartbeat and felt his firm buttocks firmly pressed against hers. His large, rough hand gently slid across her satin-like back. A burning heat suddenly rose. At this moment, if he really wanted her, she could not refuse and could only be at his mercy. Li Qingshan took a deep breath and slowly let go of his hand. With great difficulty, as if he was cutting off a piece of flesh from his body, he placed her on the brocade couch and said, "Let me take a good look at you." Han Cheongji felt a wave of disappointment and loss. She was almost reluctant to part. She wanted him to continue hugging her like this, no matter what he did. Li Qingshan was admiring her body in admiration. Her entire body was slender and well-proportioned, especially the places that should be plump. They were extremely plump, sexy and enchanting to the extreme. No matter how generous Han Cheongji was, at this moment, she could not help but feel shy. Her straight and slender legs were curled up. There was not even half a bit of manliness left. It was as if she was waiting for her husband to come. That night, their date lasted for a long time. Once they thought about how they would soon be separated and not seeing each other again for several months, neither of them was willing to pay attention to the passage of time. It was not until early morning the next day that they reluctantly helped each other put on their clothes. Li Qingshan personally sent her to the cave where she would be in closed-door meditation. Looking at the cave's door closed, he almost could not resist the urge to go into closed-door meditation with her. But he shook his head and dispelled this thought. He was afraid that by the time they came out of closed-door meditation, they would already have a child. How could they still cultivate in peace? Last night, at the end of their passionate entanglement, she saw that he was holding back pitifully. She did not have time to be bashful and boldly used her hand to help him. And then she sternly warned him that while she was in closed-door meditation, he was not allowed to have an affair, otherwise, this plaything would belong to her. It was only then did Li Qingshan realize her conspiracy. He laughed and said, "If you want me not to have an affair, just relying on these methods is not enough." His eyes fixed on her tender, bright red lips. Han Qiongji immediately understood what he meant. How could she agree? She bluntly said that only brothel girls would do that. She scolded him for being insatiable, for being ungrateful and violating justice. In the end, Li Qingshan settled for the next best thing. He took pleasure in her soft breasts, and in the end, he even dirted her face, so she complained for a long time. Li Qingshan could see that after confirming their relationship, she was actually very bold in this aspect. He thought that she used to often go to the brothel to play, so under the influence of what she saw and heard, she might know more things than he did. When the time came, he would coax her to try it out properly, so that his transmigration would not be in vain. He was already looking forward to married life. As for Han Qiongji's warning, he did not take it to heart at all. At this very moment, how could there be room for other people in his heart? Even Gu Yenying had to step aside. After returning to Cloud Wisp Island to inform Little N, Li Qingshan went straight to Rinqin Island. In Ruexian's pill room, Han Qiongji was not there, so he could concentrate on concocting medicinal pills. He thought that when she broke through to the 10th layer of the aura refining realm, she would also need Jinling Dan when she entered the foundation building realm. At a time like this, he had never considered that the first miss of the Han family would never need him to provide her with pills. He was only doing it for her own good. Ruexian smiled as soon as she saw Li Qingshan. "You still look like you're in love. Looks like you had quite a good night last night. Don't tell me you've already ruined the young miss of the Han family. How could that be? But I'll probably be married in a few months." Li Qingshan smiled from ear to ear. He had held back this news time and time again, but in the end, he could not help but reveal it to Ruexian, who shared a great secret with him. Ruexian's heart skipped a beat. She said sorrowfully, "Then I really do need to congratulate you. It's just a pity for me. I spend the entire night before the cauldron, thinking about refining pills. Everyone close to me cares about me." Li Qingshan smiled. "Senior sister, if you want a man, you can line up from here all the way to Clear River City." Ruexian took a step forward and placed her hand on Li Qingshan's shoulder gently. The light in her eyes flickered. "It's a pity that what I want already belongs to someone else. P.S. Originally, I wanted to write less about this, but by the time I returned to my senses, I've already written a lot. I stopped myself right at the brink of the cliff in a hurry. It's a sloppy start, but a weak finish. A process like this is essential for the development of their relationship. If you like it, just treat it as a bonus. If you don't, just skip it. Your support is my greatest motivation. Dash. Chapter 359. Li Qingshan gazed at her gentle face that completely differed from Han Qiongji's and was left speechless for a moment. He felt rather complacent, but also rather awkward. If it were in the past, he could take advantage of this opportunity to tease her a little, but that was difficult to say now. He thought, Li Qingshan, oh Li Qingshan, Qiongji has only just entered secluded cultivation. You can't do anything that will let her down, so I have to say a few things to make Ruexian give up. Don't tell me you think I'm talking about you. A mischievous smile that Li Qingshan was familiar with appeared on Ruexian's face. Of course not. I won't. Li Qingshan brushed her hand away in exasperation. He eased up inside, but he also felt a hint of disappointment for some reason. He was unable to tell whether she was telling the truth or not. Was that a joke earlier, or a test? Or perhaps, she really did have someone she loved a long time ago, which was why she had never accepted a single man's confession of love in the past few years. Was that man in the Mist Province? He immediately thought of a tattooed barbarian man with a blue cloth wrapped around his head, standing on a mountain with a child in his arms, gazing north at the mother of his child. He shivered all over. Why did he find it rather familiar, and he felt rather displeased too? As he thought of that, Ru Xian had already drifted away. She closed the door and set up the formation, making all preparations for adultery. She was as graceful as a white ghost. Looking at her graceful figure, she did not seem like she had ever had a child. Li Qingshan nodded. Ru Xian said, "Oi, what are you standing there for? Did you eject your brains out last night? Take out the blue butterfly flower." Li Qingshan felt like he had been struck by lightning. He was tongue-tied. "Is that something you're supposed to say? Is that something you're supposed to say?" Ru Xian said in disdain, "Isn't it just something between a man and a woman? I know more than you, little boy." Li Qingshan could not help but take a step back. He had heard that the barbarian women of the Mist Province were extremely liberal in this aspect. He thought of a group of tattooed men with white cloth wrapped around their heads. He stood at the top of the mountain and looked to the north. Ru Xian blushed as if she could read his mind. "What nonsense are you thinking? I'm a doctor." Li Qingshan joked, "I didn't say anything." Ru Xian's expression froze. Thinking about it, what he thought had nothing to do with her. She directly took out the crystal burner. "Stop talking nonsense. I'll let you see the results of my research last night." Li Qingshan took out a blue butterfly flower, but Ru Xian raised 3 slender fingers. 3. Li Qingshan asked doubtfully, "Are you confident?" "Of course." 10 hours later. A muffled sound came from the furnace. The concoction had failed. In the face of Li Qingshan's disdainful gaze, Ru Xian straightened her hair without changing her expression. "It was an accident. Do you want to continue?" Li Qingshan asked. Now, the success rate had dropped to 20%. Ru Xian was roused too. "Of course. Give me another one." Li Qingshan passed another 3 blue butterfly flowers to her. "Since you're confident, let's continue." Ru Xian's eyes flickered. "Aren't you afraid I'll ruin it again?" "Then let's continue." "It's not like I'm the only one losing anyway," said Li Qingshan. He would not doubt those he used, and he would not hire those he doubted. There was no better choice than her in the entire 100 schools of thought. "Then give me 5. Ru Xian propped herself up and took a step forward with her left foot. She knelt on the cushion on one knee and rolled up her right sleeve. She revealed her slender, jade-like arm and placed it on the crystal resin furnace. She was like a female dealer in a casino, holding the dice cup boldly and shouting, "Place your bets." Li Qingshan called her a barbarian inside and passed the 5 blue butterfly flowers to her. Afterwards, he stared straight at the crystal resin cauldron like a gambler who had placed a huge bet. However, he found it boring very soon, so he shifted his gaze to Ru Xian. After staring at it for a while, she glared at him. He looked away and felt bored, so he simply sat down to cultivate. The night passed, and the sky brightened. The furnace was opened, and auspicious light flowed around. Ru Xian took out the 5 true spirit pills and smiled. "It's done." Li Qingshan also revealed a relieved smile. "Do you want to continue?" Ru Xian said, "Continue." This time, there were 7 flowers. Concocting pills did not mean that the fewer the ingredients, the better it was. It was just like cooking. If the ingredients were too small, it would be extremely difficult to control the heat and taste. Moreover, it would also waste time and energy. Of course, it did not mean that the more ingredients, the better. A big pot of rice would never be able to compare to a small stove. It did not matter if the food tasted bad, but if the pills were bad, it meant that their effects would be greatly reduced, and they would not be able to unleash their own medicinal properties. The amount of control was related to the skill of the pill refiner and the quality of the furnace. With Ruexion's level, it was best to refine 12 true spirit pills in one furnace. With Li Qingshan's unrestrained support, she very quickly reached this level. However, this also meant that if she failed, she would lose 100,000 spirit stones. Every time she opened the furnace, it was like a huge gamble. In this process, Li Qingshan could also be considered to have seen the other side of Ruexion with his own eyes. That kind of courageous gambler, and it just so happened that she won the gamble. The success rate very quickly climbed to more than 90%, exceeding Li Qingshan's best imagination, and even exceeding Ruexion's own imagination. A few days passed, and after refining a few furnaces of pills in succession, Ruexion was already a little tired. However, the two of them did not say that they would stop. Under the intense pressure, Ruexion was like a gambler who had lost all her fortune, and suddenly started winning. Then, she could not stop. Her whole person was in a kind of excited state, and her potential was completely stimulated. It seemed like even her luck had become better. In his previous life, Li Qingshan had experienced this kind of strange state before. It was like Jordan's decisive shot on the basketball court, which never missed. Now, every furnace that Ruexion refined was a decisive shot. If she stopped now, she might not be able to reach such a high success rate again. Time passed, and snow covered the small path outside the alchemy room. The disciples of the School of Medicine walked past the door and could not help but shake their heads and sigh. Seeing that there was no response from inside, he went forward to push open the alchemy room's door. Immediately, a group of medical disciples rushed out to stop him. The alchemy room is a restricted area, do not trespass. Senior Ruexion is refining pills, fellow Chu, please go back. You don't have to stop me. Chu Tian stepped forward, 5-colored true qi appeared on his body, and forcefully barged in, slamming his palm on the alchemy room's door. The medical disciples did not really want to stop him, they were extremely curious about what Ruexion and Li Qingshan were doing inside, but at this moment, they were afraid to see a terrible scene. The door flashed, but it did not open. This time, it was not only Chu Tian, everyone's suspicions exploded. Refining pills in the 100 schools of thought still required a formation. At this moment, in the alchemy room, Ruexion had her eyes closed, concentrating on refining pills. Her brows were slightly furrowed. Li Qingshan cursed in his heart, and without saying another word, he immediately stood up and walked towards the door. Now was a critical moment. If he was not careful, he would waste 12 true pill, and that was not even counting. If someone barged in and found out that they were refining true pill, and saw Ruexion's auspicious beast furnace, then it would be even worse. Chu Tian pushed the door open, and became even more furious. 5-colored true qi gathered in his palm, and fiercely slammed down. The alchemy room's door suddenly opened, and a waterspout rushed out, fiercely crashing into Chu Tian's body, directly blasting him away. P.S. I just realized that there was a new Alliance Master, I was really slow to realize it. It's not that I don't understand, but the world changes quickly. Congratulations to the Alliance Master of the Space of Names, I bow and express my thanks. Chapter 360. The ripples dispersed, revealing Qingshan. His aura was surging. He was already in the 8th layer of Qi training. He was only one step away from the 8th layer, and since he had nothing to do recently, he cultivated almost every day and improved at a godly speed. Relying on his extremely pure innate Qi, he naturally achieved a breakthrough without encountering any hindrance. Chu Tian, are you crazy? Li Qingshan's face was full of anger. The door to the alchemy room behind him was closed again, and no one could see what was going on inside. With the protection of the 5 elements, Chu Tian was unharmed. He steadied himself in midair and shouted, "You finally dare to come out. What are you doing in there? What did you do to senior sister Ru Xian?" Seeing that Li Qingshan was in the 8th layer of qi training, he was shocked. How could Li Qingshan's cultivation speed be so fast too? Li Qingshan said, "None of your business." Chu Tian said, "How is it none of my business? Senior sister Ru Xian likes me, so her business is my business. If you know what's good for you, move aside. I don't want to fight you here. I'll teach you a lesson when we fight. She likes you. What kind of madness are you having? If you don't get out of here, I'll teach you a lesson right now." Li Qingshan stood with his arms crossed like a door god, showing that he would not budge. Cutting off someone's path to wealth was like killing their parents. Li Qingshan was filled with murderous intent. However, he frowned. Chu Tian had reached the 9th level of qi refining in such a short time. The speed at which his cultivation base rose was shocking, and his aura grew more and more powerful. It would be difficult to defeat him, let alone stop him. The spell formation would not be able to withstand Chu Tian's palm of the 5 elements, and could only rely on the shockwaves of the battle. Just the aftermath of the battle was enough to destroy the alchemy room. Seeing the 2 girls standing not far behind Chu Tian, he shouted, "Are you just going to watch him come looking for women?" The 2 girls said in unison, "As long as Brother Tian has us in his heart, we will support him no matter what he does." The onlookers gasped in admiration. Chu Tian's face was full of pride. "Did you hear that? I'm not like you, being tied up by a woman." He suddenly thought that Li Qingshan might not have been tied up and had already touched his woman. His expression became even more unsightly. Li Qingshan was surprised. He cursed, "No wonder you're crazy enough to come out and look for women. You're such a heartless rotten woman. I don't want it even if you give it to me." The faces of the 2 girls changed. Chu Tian's face immediately darkened. "You can insult me, but you can't insult my women. Those who touch my reverse scale shall die." The 5 elemental Jinqi in his body burst forth, and the 5 elemental palm imprint radiated a brilliant light as it soared into the sky. Li Qingshan spread his arms, and the waves behind him surged up like the raging tides of the sea. With just a few words, the 2 of them had pulled each other's hatred to the highest level. Chu Tian descended from the sky, his palm bearing the weight of Mount Tai. Li Qingshan looked up, and the 5 elements palm imprint filled his vision. It was almost overwhelming, as if it was the wrath of heaven that could not be avoided or blocked. He took a step forward, and he soared into the sky. His qi was like a torrential ocean, but he had lost the geographical advantage first. He was about to collide with the 5 elements palm imprint. He suddenly used the wave-treading stance, and moved away in the air to avoid the sharp edge. "I knew you wouldn't dare to block it." Chu Tian laughed wildly, ignoring Li Qingshan, and rushed towards the pill room. Li Qingshan did not let him see. He felt that there was something fishy going on. The spiritual qi of the world constantly resonated with him. He had never felt so at ease before. Many memories flashed through his head. Suddenly, he stopped on a young face and ground his teeth. "Li Qingshan, I will return the pain and humiliation you've given me 10-fold, 100-fold. However, no matter how bold he was, he would never be bold enough to barge into the 100 schools of thought to demand for a person. That would be suicidal." However, he had already ordered people to keep an eye on Li Qingshan's movements. As soon as he left the 100 schools of thought, he would capture him immediately. Without any evidence, no one could do anything to him. However, that was not the first thing he had to do right now. He took off and arrived above the Clear River Prefecture in the blink of an eye, landing directly in front of the entrance. Under the gazes of everyone, he made his way into the building like a king returning, insufferably arrogant. The building was still brightly lit like it was daytime. Wei Zhongyuan gazed at the sky and strode in. In the eyes of regular people, they only found this man to be awe-inspiring, like a god descending upon the mortal world. However, the cultivators all sighed in amazement. This was clearly a foundation establishment cultivator. The disciples of the school rushed over in a hurry to congratulate him. Every single one of them fawned over him, while those who originally belonged to Wei Zhongyuan's faction ravished with joy. Wei Zhongyuan waved his hand. The school has some family matters to deal with, so the building will be closed today. Everyone, please return. The disciples of the sect immediately began to clear the area. Their orders were like mountains, and their words were the law. For Qi practitioners, foundation establishment cultivators were an unshakable existence. Every disciple of the sect knew that the sky of the sect was about to change today. Wei Zhongyuan led the disciples straight to the top floor of the building. Begonia currently stood in the garden on the top floor, gazing at the resplendent night view of the city in thought. She heard the disturbance behind her and suddenly looked back. Her eyes met with Wei Zhongyuan's. Both of them were slightly taken aback before undergoing a series of changes. One was deeply worried, while the other was ravished with joy. Wei Zhongyuan studied Begonia greedily. He no longer had any fear. He fantasized about the pleasure of pressing this woman who ordered him around and doing whatever he wanted to her. He took a step forward and clasped his hands. Sect Master Qiu, I've already undergone the heavenly tribulation and reached foundation establishment. According to the rules of the school, I hope the sect master can marry me as soon as possible so that we can become cultivation partners and comprehend the fortune of yin and yang together. Begonia waved her hand rather tiredly. You're all dismissed. Although it was winter and the water was dry, its roar was thunderous, and water splashed everywhere. That's right. This was where Oxen had brought Li Qingshan to cultivate. It was where Little An had first learned the path of white bone and great beauty. It was also where he had met Xianyue by chance. The various memories floated through his mind like smoke. Li Qingshan laughed aloud and dove headfirst into the pool. Because this place was part of the boundless mountains, it was uninhabited. Also, because it was close to the human world, there were no demonic beasts. At the same time, it was very secluded, making it the best place to cultivate. Together with Little An, they arrived at the cave behind the waterfall. When they saw that everything was the same, they both felt a sense of familiarity. It looks like we'll have to stay here for a while, Li Qingshan said. Before coming out this time, he had accepted many random missions to avoid arousing suspicion if he did not return for a long time. Little An nodded and said, all right. However, she made up her mind that she would work hard to catch up to his footsteps. Li Qingshan sat down cross-legged and took out the pills that Ru Xian had given him. As he had requested, they were all high-grade pills. There were even 2 virtue accumulation pills among them. Li Qingshan directly took out a virtue accumulation pill and consumed it. Then, he closed his eyes and digested and absorbed it. Meanwhile, Little An sat down near the entrance of the cave and watched over him. Days passed one after another. The water from the waterfall grew stronger and stronger. That was a sign that the winter snow was melting. Li Qingshan continuously consumed pills. He had already consumed 3 virtue accumulation pills, but he was still a distance away from the final step. Although it was only a step, it sometimes felt like it was so far away that he could not reach it. However, he was not impatient. He patiently allowed time to pass by. The winter snow melted and the trees sprouted. On a certain day, at a certain moment, he suddenly opened his eyes. There was a gleam of joy in his eyes. The ray of light that he had been looking forward to for a long time had finally descended from the sky. He felt as if he had crossed a certain boundary and stepped into another world. At the same time, he felt a great danger approaching. He only had time to say to Little N, "Go away," before the blazing white lightning engulfed him. An electric arc as thick as a water snake bounced Little N away. The cave had already turned into a sea of lightning. Streaks of lightning intertwined and crawled like living creatures, letting out violent roars that sounded like the roars of tigers and dragons. Boom, 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 boom. The lightning tribulation did not descend from the sky like he had imagined. Instead, it surged over from all directions, passing through the thick rock and underground and completely surrounding Li Qingshan in a single moment. It was so fast that he had no time to react at all. In that moment, Li Qingshan even felt like he was the one who had released the lightning, and the source of the lightning was the spirit turtle's demon core in his body. The lightning pierced the spirit turtle's profound shell, the ox demon forges its hide, his flesh, blood, and bones. It even pierced his soul. Li Qingshan had made a huge mistake. Regular demons would spit out their demon core and keep it away from their bodies when they underwent their tribulations. It was exactly because the cultivation of the demon core had crossed the invisible boundary of the world that it would summon the lightning. Why would anyone undergo their tribulation while holding their demon core in their body? However, Li Qingshan did not know about this. There were no human books that recorded how demons underwent their tribulations, nor had a demon general ever told him about this. He did have one by his side, but Millipede had always been a simpleton. Why would he think of telling him about this? The rocks in the cavern were all crystallized by the scorching energy before shattering and condensing again from the heat. They constantly shattered and condensed again. Intense pain. Tearing pain. It was as if he was being torn apart inch by inch. The spirit turtle suppresses the seas. Li Qingshan bellowed out. The demon core shone with rings of blue light, stabilizing his mind, soul, and body. Li Qingshan stood up, and his body rapidly swelled. When he rushed out of the cavern, he was already 20 or 30 meters tall. He had completely turned into a demon, and he was still growing larger. His roar drowned out the lightning as he swung his arms, like he was fighting against an invisible enemy. The pool water and waterfall turned into mist in an instant, rolling and churning like a thick cloud. It landed on the ground, and an imposing figure could be seen in the midst of the constantly flashing lightning. It seemed like the passage of time, but in reality, it was only a short moment. The disappearance of the lightning was as fast and mysterious as its arrival, without any warning. Qingshan. Little N's face was full of worry. He took a step forward and called out his name. He was almost unconscious when he heard this call and woke up. The white mist that shrouded the surroundings was like a white towel that was full of water that had been twisted by someone. The torrential rain poured down, soaking his crimson hair. The water level in the dried-up pool continued to rise. He looked down and saw a blurry figure on the surface of the water. When he saw himself in the water, he revealed a surprised expression. "Is this me?" Shaoan rushed into the mist and saw where he was with a single glance. She stopped and was taken aback. So noisy. He casually grabbed at the sky, and the mist that filled the sky turned into water and returned to the deep pool. He was not submerged by the water, but floated up and stood up from the water. He waved his hand, and the water surface was flattened. Like a mirror, it clearly reflected the blue sky and white clouds, as well as his appearance. His fiery red hair was draped over his back, and his body was like the work of a sculptor. Every line seemed to have been carefully polished, presenting the most perfect golden ratio, a balance between strength and beauty. If this was not enough to surprise Li Qingshan, when he saw his face reflected in the water, he was immediately stunned. He had seen many handsome men in the past, such as Hua Qingzan and Han Tie, but the handsomeness of his face was no less than theirs. As a matter of fact, it might even surpass them. If he could ignore the two curved ox horns protruding from his head, he could become the man of every woman's dreams. Li Qingshan suddenly understood that this was what he looked like after assuming a human form. He touched his face and smiled. So heavenly tribulations have cosmetic effects too. He thought about how all the animals and birds had become rather presentable after undergoing the heavenly tribulations. He was already 70 to 80% human in the first place, but he had been directly struck into a handsome man. Little and smiled as well. He asked, "How do you feel?" "Of course it's fantastic." Li Qingshan roared out, startling a large flock of birds. He laughed aloud, revealing his sharp canines. He actually seemed rather sinister. Power surged through his body endlessly, making him tempted to find a powerful opponent and fight it out right now. The three elders, Fu Qingjin, these opponents that were originally out of his reach had suddenly been pulled closer to him. After enduring for so long, it was finally time to bring up the past again. Your support on this site is my greatest motivation. Chapter 363. The surface of the water was as calm as a mirror. Even the raging waterfall was unable to create a single ripple. Li Qingshan lowered his head, and his reflection in the water suddenly smiled at him. It was even more unrestrained than the smile on his face. He bent down and extended his hand. When the tip of his finger touched the surface of the water, ripples spread out in all directions endlessly. From the very center to the edge of the pool, they did not disperse at all. The spirit turtle's demon core constantly flickered. The surging demon chi constantly rose up, constantly being depleted. It was almost completely depleted. This attracted Little N's attention as well. In the center of the ripples, two hands, one real and one fake, actually clasped together. A hand extended out of the water, followed by a wrist, an arm, and a similarly handsome face. Pearl-like droplets of water dripped down. Li Qingshan dragged his other self out of the mirror in the water bit by bit. Their appearances were exactly the same, without the slightest difference. Little N was slightly surprised. Her eyes could see through the real and the fake, but she was unable to see anything fake at all. It was like she was Li Qingshan's twin brother. Innate ability, Water Mirror's Image. This was the name that Li Qingshan had given it. It was like taking a flower from a mirror and scooping up the moon from the water. It was also known as a clone technique. There were so-called water clones among water techniques, but they were actually just condensed from water. Coupled with some illusions of water, they seemed like real people. However, when it came to actual battle, apart from attracting the enemy's attention, they also served as a punching bag. They did not have much battle prowess to speak of. As for this water mirror's image, it seemed fake yet real, and it was completely under Li Qingshan's control. Li Qingshan felt like his mind had split into two. He was currently looking at the world from two different perspectives. The feeling of seeing his own appearance was rather strange. Moreover, he was rather unaccustomed to controlling it. In Little N's eyes, it was even stranger. The two Li Qingshan stood face to face and reached out to touch their own faces at the same time, as if they were looking at a mirror. Li Qingshan raised his hand. Every single line was so real that he could even feel the beating of his heart and the flow of his blood. This was not a dummy made from water or clay, but a real clone. It was said that one could not attend to two things at once. Now, it could be said that he had the doppelganger technique, but he preferred to call it a mirror image. However, it was not an easy task to separate the mirror image from the main body. He could not help but control it as if it was his own body, advancing or retreating together. Little N covered her mouth and snickered. She didn't look like a demon general at all. When Li Qingshan glared at her, she raised her head and glared back at him. Li Qingshan had no choice but to close his eyes. He tried to experience the feeling of drawing a circle with his left hand and a square with his right. After a moment, Li Qingshan used his demonic chi and bent his knees to step on the water. Only his clone shot up into the sky. He arrived above the clouds. He looked down at the thousands of mountains and the clouds in the distance. On the earth, the mountain peaks gathered and the waves raged. It was a vast expanse. Suddenly, at the end of this vast expanse, he saw an insignificant little undulating, like a crouching bull. Beside the crouching bull was a quiet little village. Many people were working near the village. It was so peaceful and quiet that it was like a small painting. It suddenly awakened all of Li Qingshan's memories. So his hometown was not far away. For a moment, he forgot the hardships of living under someone else's roof, forgot the pain of hunger and cold. Because of the three great supernatural powers left behind by Brother Ox, his strength, speed, and demonic aura far surpassed that of ordinary demon generals. The overall battle power was even more shocking. According to his estimation, his doppelgangers would not have too much of a problem dealing with Foundation establishment cultivators like Begonia who were not good at fighting. And, according to his past experiences, the effects of this innate ability should increase as his cultivation increased. If he could pull out even more doppelgangers from the water, just what would the effects be? After completing another mission and obtaining a few corpses, Li Qingshan used the glazed mirror of invisibility to hide himself and returned to the edge of the boundless mountains. Little and still had not emerged from seclusion. He had nothing to do, so he crossed his legs and sat down. He took out the high-grade spiritual artifact he had bought below the Green Vine Mountain. The whale's ingestion of water. He still did not have a suitable weapon right now. After becoming a demon general, he could refine human spiritual artifacts and turn them into so-called demon armaments. A powerful wave of demonic chi was injected into it. Perhaps it was because he had already refined this spiritual weapon, but the process was unexpectedly simple. Gradually, the shape of the whale's ingestion of water changed as well. It became a more regular hilt, but the price was that it lost many of its original functions. It could no longer shoot out Gui water lightning or ice spikes. However, these two functions that were originally very practical were completely useless to Li Qingshan in his demon general form. There was no need for him to keep them. He only had two requirements for his weapon, sharpness and toughness. Although Li Qingshan was only a beginner in the art of artifact forging, he used his powerful control over water to force large quantities of water spiritual energy into the whale's ingestion of water. The hilt spat out a blade inch by inch. A few hours later, Li Qingshan raised the blade in his hand in satisfaction. The narrow, sharp blade shone with rainbow light under the sunlight. Standing before the cold pool, he swung his hand casually, and the waterfall before him was cut in half. He could not help but laugh aloud. If someone were here, they would see a naked man standing on the edge of a cliff with an extremely beautiful ice blade on his shoulder. He smiled in a flamboyant manner. Yes, Li Qingshan was not wearing any clothes. He was truly naked. After transforming into a demon general, he felt that wearing clothes was not very comfortable. He was born this way, so there was no need for clothes to cover himself. Hence, every time he transformed into a demon general, he would take off his clothes and walk around naked. At this moment, the smell of blood wafted over. The smell of human blood was accompanied by the soft sounds of killing. Li Qingshan immediately looked back. His gaze passed through the layers of trees. Although he was far away from the mountains and could not see the exact situation, it still piqued Li Qingshan's curiosity. With a flash, he disappeared from where he was. After passing through a few mountains, he saw an extremely familiar small village. More accurately, it was a village. This was also an old place, the place where hunters lived, the Drawn Rains village. Only then did Li Qingshan remember that the place where he cultivated was actually closer to the Drawn Rains village, which was deep within the vast mountain range. However, at that time, there were huge mountains in the way, and the mountain paths were rugged and difficult to traverse. That was why it felt so far away. At this moment, the Drawn Rains village was being surrounded and attacked by a large group of soldiers. There were quite a few experts among them. Chapter 364. Li Qingshan smiled. What? It's only been a few years, and you don't recognize me anymore? Huang Binggu really did find it very difficult to connect this immortal who rode on clouds with that farmer's boy. He was more knowledgeable than regular people, but he had never seen someone who could fly like this. It had only been 2 or 3 years since they last met, but his originally tall frame had already completely unfolded. His shoulders were broad and his arms long, and his body was imposing. Just sitting on the cloud gave off an invisible pressure. Although the outline of his face had not changed much, his entire bearing was like a completely different person. Outside the village, many soldiers threw down their weapons and bowed to him. Although most of the hunters in the village could recognize Li Qingshan, they still struggled to believe their eyes. Li Qingshan glanced at the stunned masters outside the village and asked, "What's going on?" Huang Binggu smiled bitterly and put down his bow. He told him the whole story. As it turned out, a new district magistrate had been sent over soon after Yi Dachuan had left. This time, he was not someone with connections like Yi Dachuan, but a scholar from the academy. In just a short year or two, he managed the Qingyang district into a solid block, becoming the local tyrant. The Drawn Reins village was a stubborn force from the old era, as well as a flashy name that challenged the authority of the district government, so they became a holdout that was heavily regulated. Huang Binggu saw how Li Qingshan did not put on the airs of a cultivator and knew that his intentions had not changed, so he pleaded, "Qingshan, you have to help me this time. You're half a member of the Drawn Reins village." Only then did Li Qingshan remember this. He smiled. Back then, when I entered the Drawn Reins village, it was like entering a tiger's den. You can be considered a first-rate master now, so why are you still in this village? I remember when you said you wanted to wander around again. Although Huang Binggu was still called Sickly Tiger right now, his face was rosy. He was in high spirits. Clearly, the ginseng alcohol had played a significant role. He cultivated his inner force diligently and had already reached the level of a first-rate master. Huang Binggu glanced back at the village. The new district magistrate is overbearing. How can I just leave like that? Li Qingshan patted him on the shoulder. Do you have any wine? Huang Binggu's face lit up, and he turned to the manor and shouted, "Bring the wine." Jars of wine were served, and the two of them drank on the watchtower. Sure enough, it didn't take long before the new county magistrate received the news and rushed over. He didn't ride a horse or sit in a sedan chair, but used his lightness skill to float over. In this day and age, being a scholar was not synonymous with being weak. Inner force and swordsmanship were compulsory subjects. The new county magistrate was also young. As soon as he saw Li Qingshan, his expression changed, even though he was also a first-rate master. But his knowledge was a level higher than Huang Binggu's. His heart shuddered, high-level Qi practitioner. His attitude immediately became extremely polite. After hearing about his identity as a hawk-wolf guard, he became even more careful. Li Qingshan also did not side with Huang Binggu. He invited the county magistrate over and mediated between the two of them. He got the county magistrate to stop using weapons and got Huang Binggu to change the name of Drawn Reins village, a tall tree that attracted the wind, so as to avoid senseless killings. How could the two of them refuse the mediation? They immediately shook hands and made up. After drinking, Li Qingshan patted Huang Binggu's shoulder. How can I allow someone to sleep by my bedside? Old brother Huang, you better find another way to survive. He shoved a pill into his hand. The darkness and moonlight that had just descended on the hall was purged by the flames once again. The hall creaked and trembled, like an old man in his twilight years. It could no longer endure its own weight and began to collapse. At this moment, time seemed to slow down. The movements of every single speck of dust was extremely clear in Li Qingshan's eyes. He did not assist little Anne. After undergoing the heavenly tribulation, her strength was no less than his. An ability like the Path of White Bone and Great Beauty allowed her to become more powerful than her peers with every step she took. He looked at the sky again. The golden pheasant elder had been completely frightened by Li Qingshan's punch. He did not even dare to circle around. He unfurled his wings and took off into the clouds. Li Qingshan casually let go of the hilt and swung his hand. He exhaled gently and leaned his shoulder backwards. He extended his hand as hard as he could, like he was throwing a shot into the sky. His feet showed no intentions of leaving the ground. Instead, they sank even deeper. Compared to his movements, everything around him was so slow that it looked like a still picture. Surging demon chi surged into his arm. Something was released, and his slender arm suddenly turned the color of black metal. It rapidly expanded and extended. 3 meters, 15 meters, 30 meters. He extended his 5 fingers that were as thick as pillars and grabbed the fleeing golden pheasant in the sky. Where do you think you're going? The golden pheasant elder's face was filled with fright. He felt a terrifying power tighten around him, almost suffocating him. He fell towards the hall once again. At that moment, the ratio between the two seemed to return to normal. The arrogant rooster had been grabbed by a human's hand and sent into the kitchen. All that was left was panic. All the disciples of the Green Vine Mountain widened their eyes. All of this was a sight that would only appear in nightmares. The huge, demonic claw was unimaginable. Just what kind of monster was hidden in the hall? The hall was large, but it was probably extremely restrictive to the monster. The golden pheasant was crushed by the huge claw in the air. Li Qingshan's hand returned to normal as well. He grabbed the golden pheasant elder by the neck and smashed him into the ground heavily. Golden feathers drifted through the surroundings. Boom! The shockwave radiated out in all directions, speeding up the collapse of the hall. Rubble and beams fell down with a rumble. The golden pheasant elder called out, "You can't kill me. That goes against the Treaty of Kings. It'll lead to war. You'll die a horrible death. Let me go. We don't have any grievances of life or death." Li Qingshan leaned over and whispered into his ear with a smile, "I have another name. I'm Niu Juxia." The golden pheasant elder's eyes suddenly widened. The golden pheasant elder and the lone grave elder's presences had vanished. How could they be so fast? He believed that even if he could not defeat 2 mid-foundation establishment cultivators, they could still flee. At the very least, they could last for a while. The situation was even worse than he had anticipated. The red-haired demon general gave off no demon chi at all, and his movements were unpredictable. He was like an assassin hidden in the darkness, as if he could appear at any time and cut him down. The Green Vine Elder was overcome with fear. He raised his hand and sent Millipede flying before rushing past. Actually, Li Qingshan had yet to discover that he had vanished. Li Qingshan followed the scent and followed it all the way. He saw the curled-up Millipede and smiled. "You sure are lucky." Arriving at the entrance to the cave at the foot of the mountain, he saw the beautiful scenery of the mountains and the moon. The intoxicating fragrance of flowers filled the air. Spring was the time when the flowers bloomed. Li Qingshan wrinkled his nose. The scent had become very faint. It was not just because of the fragrance of the flowers. The Green Vine Elder must have kept his wounds under control and used some other method to hide his scent. However, Li Qingshan still managed to find a special scent, the scent of humans. It was like a thin, clear trail that extended into the depths of the boundless mountains. Li Qingshan leapt up and arrived on a small mountain on the other side, but the scent stopped there. He could not help but frown. If he could see through things, he would be able to see a nervous old man hiding in an ancient cypress 100 paces away. The green vine elder had used a technique of wood evasion and melded into the tree trunk. Although he had temporarily evaded Li Qingshan's detection, his nervousness and fear did not decrease at all. Instead, it spread even more. There was also an indescribable sense of pity. He was the mighty sect master of the Green Vine Mountain, yet he had actually been hunted down by a demon to such a state. Li Qingshan circled around in the gloomy forest a few times. Suddenly, he snorted coldly, "I can see you." He had learned this from Han Qiongji, and sure enough, it scared the Green Vine elder witless. He resisted the urge to run away. Li Qingshan casually swung his ice blade, kicking up a wild, sharp gust of wind. The towering trees were cut in half, rolling down the mountain with a rumble. Looking down from above, a large swathe of the forest had been obliterated in the blink of an eye. However, there was still no sign of the Green Vine elder. Li Qingshan called out, "Green Vine, no matter where you run off to, there will be a day when I kill you. Kill you, kill you, kill you." The sound of metal clanging echoed through the mountains again and again. It made the Green Vine elder's heart tighten. He was currently curled up, rolling down the mountain with the severed tree. In the end, he collided with a boulder. Just now, he had stopped. He felt like his waist was about to snap again. The forest fell silent once more, but he dared not move at all. Li Qingshan smiled and reached out his hand. He accurately caught her right hand that was holding the blade. Yi Liusu immediately let go. She grabbed his arm and pulled it down. At the same time, she caught the curved blade with her left hand and slit his throat. She was like an antelope hanging its horn, untraceable. Her killing intent was hidden in it. Li Qingshan also felt a hint of danger. He tilted his head slightly. A chill passed through his throat, leaving a thin trace of blood. The smile on his face didn't change. Taking advantage of the weakness of his attack, he grabbed her left hand again and pressed her heavily on the stone platform. Yi Liusu struggled for a while. Naturally, it was useless under the suppression of Li Qingshan's strength. She raised her long leg in black boots and kicked at the back of his head. Li Qingshan leaned down and avoided the kick. He said, "Before you make a move, you'd better listen to what he's here for." Their eyes met. The tips of their noses almost touched. They could clearly feel each other's breath. It was ambiguous and charming. Yi Liusu stared at Li Qingshan's eyes without showing any weakness. The light in her eyes dimmed a little, showing the original dark blue color of her eyes, like ice in the night. "Who are you?" Li Qingshan was taken aback. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. He raised his eyebrows. Good question. He currently didn't have a proper name. Xianyue had once called him Big Black. This was clearly a terrible name. He had once called himself the Old Demon of Black Mountain, but this was even worse. Was he afraid that others wouldn't be able to contact Li Qingshan? Li Qingshan instantly fell into distress. He had never been good at coming up with names. He had almost forgotten that there was a peerless beauty pressing down on him. Yi Liusu used this chance to keenly observe her enemy. She suddenly noticed that there seemed to be something engraved on the two sharp and proud horns on his head. She murmured, "North Moon." Li Qingshan's eyes instantly lit up. "Right, that's it." He retraced his memories to a few years ago. In the depths of the boundless mountains, the naughty and adorable cat demon had forcefully engraved this promise on his horns, leaving it in the depths of his memory. Even the heavenly tribulation could not erase it. On Ice Sword Cliff, he had roared at the sky as loudly as he could, swearing that he would obtain the power to send her to the Dragon Province. No, how was he now? Ieyasu squinted her eyes and suddenly raised her head. She sneered inside, hasn't anyone ever told you not to be distracted when you're fighting? With a thump, Ieyasu lay back down on the stone bed. She gasped in pain. So hard. Li Qingshan returned to his senses and smiled. Just call me North Moon. How's your head? A huge bump had appeared on Ieyasu's smooth forehead. Little and crouched at the entrance of the cave. His teeth chattered as he let out a chuckle. I'm going to kill you.